I think it's been pretty steadily cumulative. I kind of would discover things and add it. I really am a fan of just about everything that I've heard because it's just so fascinating from the kind of core musical idea of it. But I mean, I can remember a bunch of times where my eyes were just completely opened up to a completely new genre or chapter.
Mhm.
Um, like in elementary school, somehow somebody convinced the home economics teacher to allow us to bring in a turntable and listen to a couple of records one day. And that day, I heard Back in Black and Moving Pictures by Rush for the first time. Uh, it's I'll never have another day like that in my life.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'd love to welcome Mr. Jim Tyrrell here with me. He's a singer and songwriter. He's got a new album coming out. And before we do anything else, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Jim Tyrrell. I'm a singer-songwriter musician up here in the frozen Northeast. I'm in the state of New Hampshire. I play shows mostly here in New England, but occasionally we'll do little tours in the continental US. But I enjoy playing my own stuff, but I do also do a lot of shows as a dueling piano player.
And you do what, at least 200 shows a year?
Yeah, I get to stay pretty busy. But as a working musician, you've got to wear a lot of hats. So I host an open mic one day a week. I do some solo shows. I work with a couple of different bands, a classic rock band and then a smaller folk outfit. So you just, find ways to stay busy.
Yeah, I read you've opened up for Don McLean.
That was a treat. That was in a movie theater turned concert venue, like a lot of these smaller towns have. It's called the Flying Monkey right here in Plymouth, New Hampshire. And it was so great because during my little sound check, he actually came out and said hello to me. He's like, "Hey, kid, have a great show." And I was like, "This is my favorite gig ever because if anyone asks for American Pie, you have to deal with it." He thought that was pretty funny. There's a lot of words to that one.
Now, I have to ask this. How are you received going to open up for Weird Al when your music is not Weird Al kind of music?
It's true. It seems like a peculiar fit. There's a little bit of humor, I guess, in my music. Some of it has a tongue placed in cheek, but it's not parody work or anything like that. But the people it was at the time Meadowbrook, now it's the Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion, I believe. They're wonderful people, and it's great that they involve local musicians in that program. But the crowds thought it was okay. Eventually, during one of those shows, I've had the honor to do it three times. I opened up the to crowd requests, like dueling piano style, and people asked for some pretty peculiar things. To hear a guy take the song "I Touch Myself" by the Divinals, drop it an octave, play it like a polka. It's not too far from something you could hear Weird Al doing, I suppose.
That's true. I imagine you probably get asked to play Piano Man quite a bit.
If a night goes by where we didn't get asked to do it, it's almost like we had a night off. It feels weird at the end of the show. It comes up a lot. So I usually try to, at least on the weekends, I try to wait until it's actually 9 o'clock on a Saturday before I play it.
Of course.
Right.
And I mean, you've had four solo albums out before, so this is what, number five?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I've put out and they're all self-produced things. I've worked with some local studio musicians and stuff like that, but it's the album I just put out, Box of Shells. I've got a copy of it here. This is the first full album of original material on RoboJack Records, the label that I'm working with now.
But it's been 9 years since the last time you recorded.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Wow.
It took me a while to kind of get the ideas together. And once I had this batch of songs, I wasn't really sure if they were going to fit together quite right. But now that the album is together, I think it has a nice cohesion. I like how it came out.
Yeah, it's got different elements. Like there's a song or two I could see Paul Simon doing them, and then there's others I could say, well, I could hear Peter, Paul, and Mary maybe doing it, but you don't really sound like anybody in particular, which is, it's unique in itself.
That's good to hear because I feel like every time I write a song, I've got a specific performer or a specific idea that really is the driving template for it. And I kind of unabashedly leaned into those in this project. But, despite my best efforts, I can't help but sound like myself, I guess.
Hey, who else better to sound like, right? You don't want to copy somebody else's work.
Exactly. But I will say that Paul Simon is incredibly inspiring to me. Just the conversational nature of his lyrics. The delivery is such that you could hear those lines spoken in conversation a lot of the time, and they wouldn't sound poetic and weird. He has a foot in both of those camps very nicely.
Yeah. What got you interested in doing folk music?
Mostly the instrumentation, really. I started as a piano player, and in this area, at least when I was starting out, it was very tough to convince places to give me a gig if I was walking in with a portable keyboard under my arm. Much easier to show up with an acoustic guitar. Excuse me. So I started working with the guitar, and I was very self-conscious about it because I was kind of learning as I went. So I decided what I would do is start writing songs with the instrument because that way nobody can tell you you're playing them wrong.
Mm.
And those were kind of the sounds that I was led to. I'm also like Paul Simon. I'm a big fan of the balladeer, the storyteller in song. So I think that's kind of where I went. I said, okay, my strengths aren't going to be, guitar proficiency. It's going to be more about the lyric and the story and the atmosphere. So I think, folk music is a natural place to kind of end up there.
Oh yeah. But is piano something you just wanted to do as a kid, or was that
Oh
something
yeah,
introduced to you?
it was fascinating to me right from the start. Um, the first time I really played a piano was at my aunt's house. She had a piano and there was a radio on top of it. I don't think they really played the piano. It was just there, kind of like a treadmill, as a piece of furniture that just kind of sits there, gathers clothing. But this would have been right around 1980, I suppose, maybe a little earlier. And the song Music Box Dancer was a radio hit at the time, apparently, this little piano kind of run. And I walked over to the piano and kind of tinkered at it and figured it out. It was in the key of C. It was all the white keys. So I was like, oh, how about that? And my mom was like, oh my God, he's a prodigy. We have to put him in lessons. And I spent that whole summer taking piano lessons, and I hated it because all my friends were out roller skating that day. I was like, I want to, go and be a kid. But despite that, I just loved the instrument, and it just seemed like a good vehicle into understanding music. And I still think that piano is the best place to start for a person who's curious about music theory and the way that it works.
Oh yeah. Well, I think Eddie Van Halen kind of started out playing piano, and look what he did.
Right. Have you ever gotten a look at Eddie's guitar, like in person? They have it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame over in Cleveland.
Oh
Uh,
no.
on my last tour, we were able to stop up there, and it's amazing because he put those two different kinds of pickups in there, and he basically chiseled out the holes to do it. So the thing is just brutalized. But I don't know. Is there a better guitar tone in music? I'm not sure that there is. Brian May, maybe.
Well, Eddie was his own creature himself. He practically invented a sound.
Right.
How many guys could say that? I mean, unless you're Les Paul.
Yep. Or who was the guy from Boston? Shone.
Oh, Tom Scholes.
Tom Scholes. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know, man. You got like Jimi Hendrix. That guy did stuff that nobody ever did. I mean, the Kinks basically invented the distortion by driving knitting needles into speakers. I love history when it comes to music.
Yeah.
I'll watch documentary after documentary after documentary. I don't know if you are like that, but it just fascinates me from their start to how they develop their particular sound and all the little things that go along with it.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. I love watching documentaries, especially about the in studio kind of experience.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Foo Fighters one recently that showed the making of the Wasting Light record. And it was just so great to see. They got one of those Neve consoles and brought it to Dave's house. And it just, I can geek out on that all day.
I did do that this last weekend. I spent the day watching, let's see, Fleetwood Mac story, Van Halen, and let's see, there was another one. I don't know, but man, I've watched so many, I can't even keep up with them. And as a matter of fact, I can attribute the documentary on the Mothers of Invention on how I got to meet your PR guy, Billy James, because he was in that documentary.
Oh, fantastic. Right. Very cool.
Yeah, the guy wrote a book about him, and I was like, oh man, I need to talk to this guy. And then that's how I found out that he did what he did. And and so the history of how you got to be on this show is revealed.
No kidding. It's an honor to be a small link in the chain, I also find myself listening to a lot of music industry related audiobooks when I'm driving to all of these shows. I'm almost never listening to music. I'm right now I'm listening to a book on creativity by Rick Rubin. As you can imagine, that's certainly worth listening to. And I finished Elvis Costello's memoir recently. Which was great. And it was great that he read it, but had to back a few things up there. His accent is a little thick for me. I had to kind of listen to a couple things twice. Springsteen's book was real good. I love all of that stuff.
As those bands that are not as mainstream. I mean, most people know who Frank Zappa was, but he wasn't mainstream music. But his following, I mean, I don't know why I can know why a lot of his music didn't make it on the radio. But I mean, it took him doing a goofy little song for his daughter to even get on the radio.
The Valley Girl,
exactly.
Yeah.
But who's your favorite piano player?
My favorite piano player that's playing right now is probably Ben Folds. A lot of inspiration there. I remember when I first heard that first Ben Folds 5 record, I walked into Newbury Comics, a little record store up here in New England, and I heard it, and I had this moment that was very reminiscent of what I've read about when Steve Martin first saw Saturday Night Live. He was like, damn it, somebody did it. This idea that kind of hadn't really fully taken shape in my mind. Here it was, completely galvanized in this band that just had the whole concept completely tightened down. And it was a pivot point for me. You probably have albums that you've listened to in your life where kind of everything was a little bit different after that. Ben Folds' first record was one, and certainly Dark Side of the Moon, when I first heard that, was another, where I was just like,
Oh,
you can do this. This is a thing that you can take these instruments that I'm playing and actually create something as sonically deep as this, you know. Yeah. But Ben Folds, great piano player. Of course, I'm from the Billy Joel, Elton John camp, so
right.
I like what those guys have done a lot. But I've got tickets to see Ben. I can't afford to see Elton John.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, my first time to hear Sergeant Pepper's, that changed my life. And I'm like you, Dark Side of the Moon was a game changer for me, as far as Pink Floyd albums go. I mean, I can't name a Pink Floyd album I don't like, but
Sure.
Dark Side of the Moon just, it totally changed me. And then um let's see, trying to think the first Frank Zappa album I listened to, but I mean, he's got so many.
Well, yeah, what a catalog.
I mean, this guy can come out with two or three albums in 1 year and none of them will sound the same.
Right.
The guy's just a genius.
The Man from Utopia album was particularly fascinating to me.
I have that
The
one.
way that he kind of sings over those solos, or he sings a solo line and then they bring it back into the studio, and I don't know, might have been Adrian Belew or somebody just played the guitar line to match the melody, and you end up with this thing that just sounds like it was an impossible event.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, music, it was my companion growing up. I didn't have very many friends, and the friends that I did have, they were usually off doing something else, and I wasn't included. So I spent hours upon hours of just listening to the radio or pulling out a record album. You know, my grandpa was the one that introduced me to country music, and so
Okay.
I have such a love for like Buck Owens and the, you know, that era. And my mom, she was more on folk music. She was a big fan of Peter, Paul and Mary, and probably can still sing every word to every song they have. And my dad was more of the Bobby Vinton type music, you know.
Sure.
But then for me, it was rock music. I loved rock. Not any particular genre I could say was my favorite, because my taste changed through the years. Did you find that your taste just changed dramatically throughout the years, or did you kind of have a steady run of what you really, really like?
I think it's been pretty steadily cumulative. You know, I kind of would discover things and add it. You know, I really am a fan of just about everything that I've heard, because it's just so fascinating from the kind of core musical idea of it. But I mean, I can remember a bunch of times where my eyes were just completely opened up to a completely new genre or chapter.
Mhm.
Um, like in elementary school, somehow somebody convinced the home economics teacher to allow us to bring in a turntable and listen to a couple of records one day. And that day I heard Back in Black and Moving Pictures by Rush for the first time. Uh, it's I'll never have another day like that in my life, you know. And it was just I was off to the races then. I was just like, oh, I got to find out about all of this. There's this much harder thing going on. It's much more exciting. Um, and then all of a sudden, somebody loans me a copy of Kiss Alive 2, and it just, yeah,
Yeah.
what that was quite a door to open. I certainly didn't expect that from a home ec class,
Man, I wished I went to school with you.
right?
I thought it was a big deal when the teacher played Pac-Man Fever.
Oh gosh, yeah. And
Uh,
one of my senior high school English teachers actually did a project on satire, and he printed out the lyrics to "Kill the Poor" by Dead Kennedys and brought it in. And of course, I was a Mohawk trench coat wearing kid at the time, and I was like, wow, this guy's making an extra effort to kind of speak to me, here. I kind of respect that. So yeah, we had these little moments of real kind of musical involvement in what was otherwise a pretty pedestrian kind of school age.
I'll have to say, when I was younger, even though I had all those different musical tastes that were presented to me from different people in my family, I was really more focused on the rock music. And as I got out of high school, I started to expand a little bit more, and then I got a little more into jazz and blues, and I'm talking like the old blues, not the blues like you'd hear Eric Clapton play. Of course, I love that stuff, but and then the older I got, I found myself listening to stuff you really wouldn't think that I'd listen to. Like, one of my favorite singers is Tom Jones.
Sure.
And I wouldn't have appreciated him back then, but now I do.
Yeah, I can see that. There's definitely stuff that I revisit now, where I'm like, at the time, I wouldn't give this the time of day. And a lot of that was, it's kind of weird because in the late 70s, early 80s, I really liked a lot of music that you would classify now as kind of yacht rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, for a while, I was just like, I don't know what I was thinking there. And then eventually, like you're saying, you kind of evolve your viewpoint a little bit, or you see things in it that you didn't see before. I will say that until recently, the last 10 years or so, I didn't nearly appreciate Jeff Porcaro's drumming ability enough. The guy from Toto.
Yes.
But just to trace his history back and take a look at the people he worked with and the people he learned from, just an incredible player. But if you had asked me to sit down when Rosanna, when that came out, I'd have been like, yeah, I don't know. Toto 4, I probably wouldn't have really gotten into that much. And I like it quite a bit now, although Africa is arguably a little overplayed.
Yeah, when you get those classic rock stations, it's like the only songs they ever want to play, and Toto has so much great music in their catalog. I've loved Toto since Toto 4, but then I was like, oh man, those are the guys that sing Hold the Line, and was it Georgie Porgy and all these others, and this band's really cool. And their detail in the production, where you can actually hear each instrument and it's not so blended together.
Yeah.
Oh man, just I don't know, man. Now you say you've produced a lot of your albums?
That's correct. I did the first couple by myself completely, and then in around 2013, I met Ken Stringfellow, who was in the band The Posies out of the Seattle area in the 90s. Went on to be a stage musician for REM for a few years, and rekindled the career of the band Big Star. Was involved with them. And then I caught him on a solo tour, promoting what was at the time his new record. And this was down in Asheville, North Carolina. And he said, I'm doing 50 shows in 50 cities in 50 days. And I don't know anybody in Asheville who can put me up for the night. And my girlfriend at the time raises her hand immediately. She's like, we'll put you up. And I turned and said to her, we're staying with somebody. We don't live here. And she's like, no problem. I'll call them. We'll work it out. And she did, to her credit. So Ken came to the house and we got talking, and he said, when I'm not on tour, I'm producing other people's records. So we stayed in touch, and it turns out you can work with famous people. All it takes is a lot of money. Who knew? So I ran a Kickstarter campaign. I got some help from some people, and Ken came to my house and lived there for 2 weeks. And we did the principal recording. while he was there. And then he mixed it at his place in Seattle, or no, he was at his place in France at that time. So he did the mixing there. He invited me to come and look over his shoulder, but I couldn't work that out. It was mastered in Seattle, and then this album, True Stories from a Small World, was the result. It came out in 2014. So yeah, it was 9 years before the latest one. But that project taught me a lot. And I worked with a drummer friend that I know on that project, and his name is Tod Moses, very talented guy. And he and I basically did the production and the mixing on the new record now. So the two of us have kind of run with what we learned from that experience and some of the other work that Tod has done in the meantime. He's got his own studio over in Vermont now.
Oh, wow. Have you thought about just doing the production side of it, or you just like doing what you're doing?
I've done a little of that for some local musical friends, and I enjoy that. It's definitely an interesting part of the process. I'm certainly more interested in kind of bringing an idea to light and just following it through its entire process. So I like songwriting a lot, even though every time I put the pen to the paper, it seems to be a struggle to kind of get past that wall and try to write something and get out of my own way. You would think that would get easier over time. I don't know. For me, it's just like starting from scratch every time.
Do you have a ritual?
I don't. I haven't really found a particular way that works. So I try to almost approach a song from a different angle every time. I feel like I've got to sneak up on them. Sometimes it's just a specific phrase and I have no idea where it's going to go in the song. Sometimes it's a musical idea. Sometimes it's just a concept that I want to put out. A lot of times I actually participate in an online songwriting competition now and then called Songfight at songfight.org. They've been doing this since the year 2000. They post a song title, give you roughly a week and a half to write, record, and submit a song for that title. Anybody in the world can do it. And you don't win anything if you happen to win. They post all the songs, people vote on what they like the best, and then the world goes on. Since there's no prize, there's really no reason to cheat. That's kind of the argument there. But I mean, it's amazing to take a look at a song prompt like "Don't forget to come to my house on Wednesday" and see how many different ideas will come out of that. A number of times I've written a song for a particular title and thought, oh yeah, I think I really kind of nailed this. And then you'll hear 10 things where you're like, oh no, that's brilliant. I would never have gotten there. That's a much better take on this idea. So that's been a good exercise. The most important thing about that exercise, though, is the deadline. That's the most important creative tool to me, is just having a cutoff.
But does the pressure really get your juices flowing?
Yes, and not in a particularly enjoyable way. But I'm one of these people that I'll never call a piece of art done if I don't have to. It just, they always seem like they're gaining something. You can continue to evolve a piece of work forever, and there's value in that, of course. But there's also something to be said for taking a project and cutting it off, saying, okay, here are the good things in this. Now let's go to something else. Let's learn from it and move on to something else. So yeah, setting a deadline is important. With the new record, I said I was going to have it done by the end of last year. And it was around noon on the 31st of December when I closed the laptop. And I was like, all right, the last edit has been made. It's done. And then it took, a couple months to actually get it, in a physical form. But I like to think that I made it just under the wire.
Yeah. I just was thinking of something. Has anyone ever wrote a love song without using the word love in it?
Probably. I mean, you would think that there are probably some songs that don't overtly say love that still qualify as a love song. That's an interesting thing. I'll have to kind of dig through some things. Um, I don't I don't overtly like to lean into the love song thing. At first, I was just like, I'll never write a love song. There are enough of them. It's a completely well explored topic, and then you fall in love, and then you actually have some perspective on it. You have some things to say about it, and you have to go where the muse takes you. But I still, I don't like to hit the nail kind of that squarely on the head. I'd rather kind of approach it metaphorically, I guess. So I don't know, that alone is a good prompt for songwriting, to write a love song without using the word love. That's a great way to start a song project.
See, now I've given you a challenge.
Right.
And you have to give me credit on the album, all right?
Absolutely. For sure.
Now, have you had any particular hurdles in your life that made it difficult for you to either achieve your goals or, well, anything in particular?
Well, not uh in the way that you hear about the kind of quintessential starving artist kind of thing. I've done what I've done on the back of having a family and working full time and finding a way around with the time available. Working a full time job and then playing shows at night and pounding the pavement and stuff like that. Trying to get that going so that it could eventually take over and become my full-time career, which I'm happy to say that it has. But again, as a career, it isn't really largely driven on my original material. I'm out playing Brown Eyed Girl for people that are drinking in the bars. It pays the bills, and it's a great way to pay the bills, and it frees me up to be able to work on the creative stuff and just allow that to grow in the way that it will. A lot of artists don't do it like that. They say, I'm going to play my own music and I'm going to starve until somebody pays me. And I've got a hell of a lot of respect for the people that can do that. I took a much more cautious approach. So no, I didn't have to really overcome any serious hurdles or make any great sacrifices like that. But that also has come at the expense of my originals career being a very slow burn. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something, and I know I've mentioned Van Halen quite a bit here, but those guys, they started out playing a lot of covers, and I think it was, 1984 before they didn't even have one cover on the album.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the Diver Down record, but that's got covers all over it.
Oh yeah. I think most of the album are covers.
Yeah.
Dancing in the Street, Pretty Woman, and Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now.
Sweet William Now.
Happy Trails.
It even ends with Happy Trails, right?
There you go. You could do Happy Trails at one of your shows.
Oh gosh, my classic rock band did that once. There was the show was until 1 a.m. We were closing the bar down, and just before the end of the night, there was this bar fight, and these two guys just came tumbling into the stage, and they wiped out my keyboard, and they're just clearing everything up, and there was nothing that we could do, and the band is just standing there. And the bass player just goes up to the microphone and just starts bumba dee da bumba, and we just sang Happy Trails a cappella, and we packed our stuff up.
That's too funny. Now, if somebody was to come to you and say, Jim, I need some encouraging words for me to follow my dreams, what would that advice be?
Boy, that's putting a lot on me.
The pressure's on, brother.
I think it reminds me of something that really struck me in the Rick Rubin book that I'm reading now, where he said that whether or not you classify yourself as an artist, we are all living creative lives. It is an absolute ingrained function of how we live our everyday lives. Even the, picking an alternate route to work is an artistic act. It's a creative act. So it's important to have a perspective that allows you to recognize that you are a creative person in everything that you do. And it's not a matter of not having that resource. It's just a matter of recognizing it and channeling it. So, creative people who have a hard time manifesting work from their creativity can really feel kind of inadequate or incapable. And Ruben's words are really good for that perspective, to say, that no, it's something you can do. It's something you're already doing. You just need to kind of change your perspective, your focus a little bit.
Well, what have you got planned to do in the future, brother?
Oh man, I'm playing a bunch of shows this week. I don't have a dueling piano show for a couple of weeks, so that's nice. I'll probably take the fake piano shells that I use and bring them up to my studio and give them a new coat of paint. But I'm on the road playing my way around New England, recording songs as they occur to me. I've got a little studio space here in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and I'm hosting an open mic. And my 11-year-old has just started taking piano lessons, so he and I are spending some time in the studio. It's a golden age over here.
Man, 11 years old.
11 years old, yeah, and he's already playing the flute, but he's decided that the piano is interesting too. And I'm not really supposed to make any big formal announcements about it, but here goes. I just actually put an order in for a pressing of this album on vinyl. Always wanted to make a vinyl record, so it's more of a vanity project than anything. If I make my money back, then I'll be lucky, but it's finally going to be done. I'm going to be able to hand my mom a record and be like, put it on the turntable, Mom. I finally did it.
Man, that's an expensive process now.
Yes, but it's gotten a lot better. Like every part of the industry, the common man can actually kind of find a way in. The record labels aren't the only kind of gatekeepers to that now. You can source some of that stuff yourself. So it's exciting that there is an opportunity, but yeah, it's very tough to do it in a way that's really market competitive, at least at my scale. If I was making 1,000 records, I could get the numbers down and actually probably make some money out of it. Short run stuff, like I said, I'm just happy to have it out there. It's going to look beautiful hanging on the wall. It's going to sound really cool, and I can't wait.
I tell you, I remember spending like $6 to $8 on a record.
Yeah.
And now I go and they have them at Walmart and Target and all that, and they're 25, 30, $40. I'm going, geez, how does anybody afford to buy a record anymore?
Oh yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I'm looking at these things and I'm thinking, when I get these records in, I'm going to have to sell them for probably about $30. And the people that I've mentioned this to, they're like, well, yeah, that's pretty much in keeping with what I would pay. So at least there's that, but I don't have the opportunity to bring these to a record store and say, will you sell these? There's no room for markup. But I can probably find 100 people to buy a copy. Hopefully I'll throw them in the gig case and bring them to shows and see what happens.
Oh, you'll sell out, man. You'll sell out.
I've been accused of worse.
Not sell out, but you'll sell out of the records. There you go.
Right.
Do you have a website?
Yes, sir. Actually, the best way to find me on the internet is to go to robojackrecords.com. And there's an artist page there that shows all of my projects. And it's got a list of my my tour dates for the next few months as well.
All right. And do you do social media?
I do. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I don't do Twitter that much. I got kind of disenchanted by what's going on over there. And just the nature of how information is shared there doesn't seem to be as helpful to what I'm trying to do. Something like Instagram, where you can see a picture and some related information, it just works better. But Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of these things, basically /Jim Tyrrell, you'll find me.
Well, I'm going to be sharing those links in the description to make it easier for folks to find you. And
Sure.
And I wish you nothing but the best in everything that you do.
Hey, I appreciate the time a lot. The last tour that I did actually took me to Texas. My older son was in Air Force training down there. So I said, I'm going to book some shows in little bars and restaurants and play my way down. And I spent a couple of weeks doing it. I had a great time in Texas. The next time I'm down there, maybe I can drop in. We can have a cup of coffee.
Hey, that'd be awesome. Let me know if you're anywhere around the Austin area. That's where we're located.
That's a part of Texas I didn't get to see. I'm dying to visit Austin. You'll be the first to know.
Man, I just missed South by Southwest too, and there was some good people there.
Yeah, there's some friends here in New Hampshire have a band called Say Zuzu that did a road trip down to play some South by Southwest shows, and they're back in town now. But it was quite an adventure. It looks like they had a great time.
Well, you need to come here in April, because
Okay.
there's a place called the Hot Spot, and it's not a huge venue, but Ace Frehley is playing there.
No kidding.
Yes, and I am
man.
$50, pretty good seat, and I've got to get in there.
Yeah, no doubt. I saw him open up for Iron Maiden once. It was awesome.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Iron
the
Maiden?
Worcester Centrum. Yeah.
Well, a lot of good acts come through Austin. I got to see Judas Priest not too long ago.
Oh, nice.
Rob Halford still sings like he's 20 years old. And
see, I love that. I love that there's some guys out there that have still got it. They can still pump them right out. I'll be lucky if I get to his age and I'm still able to sing any of these crazy songs I'm writing.
Well, get this, we got to see The Who, and that was a band that I've been dying to see all my life and never have had the opportunity or the money to go.
Yeah.
And Roger Daltrey, it's just amazing that guy is almost 80 years old and can still sing like he's 20 years old.
Wow. Unbelievable.
I mean, what, Rob Halford's in close to mid 70s now. Those guys,
he's got to be, right?
Yeah, because they've been around since late 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to aspire to be that age and still sound like you're 20 years old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and Daltrey set the bar pretty high. I mean, he arguably recorded the best scream in rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen to my intro, because I captured it at the concert, and
yeah.
I made it part of my intro. So.
Oh, outstanding.
It's not really copyrighted because it was live, so
I get it. Sure.
But Jim, I appreciate you spending your time with me today, man. And as I said before, I wish the best for you.
Oh, this was a treat, man. Thanks for taking the time. Hope to see you on the road.
Yes, for sure. And if you have a new album come out in the future, let me know. I'd love to have you come on and talk about it.
Absolutely.
All right. And I want to thank all of you out there. If you are new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. I hope you will come back, hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, man, guys, you make it possible for me to do this, and thanks is just not enough. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network